The bloodiest military coup in Africa. July 29, 1966 marked the bloodiest day in Nigeria. This day is remarked as the July rematch or the Northern counter-coup. It claimed the life of the first military head of state, Major General Johnson, and many others who lost their lives. Meanwhile, those who escaped lost their positions. In this video, we'll be bringing to you the inside of Nigeria's bloodiest coup, and we shall be looking at how the coup happened, why it failed in Enugu, and the rise to power of Yakubu Gowon. For starters, what were the reasons for the coup? According to history, Northern soldiers had a list of grievances following the aborted 15 January 1966, a coup which led to the planning of the counter-coup. They had a list of grievances which included 1. The murder of Northern civilian leaders and military officers in the aborted 15 January 1966 coup d'etat. 2. On the 15th of January 1966, coup conspirators, mostly majors, had not been tried for treason and were being paid while in detention. 3. The passage of the Unification Decree. 4. Rumors of an Igbo coup to eliminate Northern soldiers. 5. The promotion of several Igbo majors to lieutenant colonel. 6. Rumors of General Ironsi's ethnic favoritism toward Igbos. 7. Plans to swap the 1st and 4th battalions and plans to rotate the military governors of the different regions. The immediate reasons for the first coup, however, concerned the nationwide disillusionment with the corrupt and selfish politicians, as well as with their inability to maintain law and order and guarantee the safety of lives and property. During the initial stages, Nziagwu and his collaborators were hailed as national heroes. But the pattern of killings in the coup gave it a partisan appearance. Killed were the Prime Minister, a Northerner, the Premier of the Northern region, and the highest-ranking Northern Army officers. Only one Igbo officer lost his life. Also killed was the Premier of the Western region, who was closely allied with the NPC. In his policies and actions, Ironsi did little to allay the fears of Igbo domination. He failed to place the coup plotters on trial as Northern leaders demanded, and he appointed Igbos to sensitive governmental positions. Against all advice, Ironsi promulgated Decree No. 34 of 1966, which abrogated the federal system of government and substituted a unitary system. He argued that the military could only govern in this way. Given the already charged atmosphere, this action reinforced Northern fears. As the North was less developed than the South, a unitary system could easily lead to Southerners taking over control of everything, as a Northern spokesperson put it. It was at the height of Northern opposition to unitarism that the counter-coup of July 1966 took place. Most top-ranking Igbo officers, including Ironsi, lost their lives. The status quo of Northern dominance was restored. The coup. By the time a disparate group of junior officers struck first in January 1966, the officers were still politically naive and had yet to master the art of coup planning and execution. This inexperience partly explains why Major Kaduna Nziagwu and others who masterminded the coup failed to take over state power. Instead, Major General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi, Commander-in-Chief of the Army, became Nigeria's first military ruler. Some of the remote causes of the coup included the use of soldiers to quell unrest, such as the riots among the people of the lower northern region, and calls on the military to supervise the 1964 elections. Whereas the latter involvement gave the soldiers a feeling of political efficacy, the beginnings of what came to be known as the federal character principle that sought to give each area some parity of representation, gave military personnel a sense of being sectional representatives. The coup of January 1966 was seen by many Northerners as an attempt by the Igbo people of the East to dominate the Federation. A successful counter-coup 6 months later, led by Northern soldiers, demonstrated the degree to which soldiers had become politicians in uniform. In August 1965, a group of Army majors, Emmanuel Ifejuna, Timothy Onwuchekwu, Chris Anuforo, Don Okafor, Humphrey Chukwuka, and Adewale Adamwega, began plotting a coup d'etat against incumbent Prime Minister Abubakar Balewa. The coup was planned because, according to the majors, the men at the helm of affairs were running Nigeria aground with their corrupt ways. Ministers under them were living flamboyant lifestyles and looting public funds at the expense of ordinary citizens. The president of Nigeria, Nnamdi Azikiwe, left the country in late 1965, first for Europe, then on a cruise to the Caribbean. Under the law, the Senate president, Nwafor Orizu, became acting president during his absence and assumed all the powers of the office. The 1966 Nigerian coup d'etat began on 15 January 1966, when mutinous Nigerian soldiers led by Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu and Emmanuel Ifejuna killed 22 people, including the Prime Minister of Nigeria, many senior politicians, many senior army officers, including their wives, and sentinels on protective duty. The coup plotters attacked the cities of Kaduna, Ibadan, and Lagos, while also blockading the Niger and Benue rivers within a 2-day span of time before the coup plotters were subdued. The general officer commanding the Nigerian army, Johnson Ironsi, was compelled to take control of the government of a country in upheaval, inadvertently putting Nigeria's nascent democracy on hold. His ascendancy to power was deemed a conspiracy by the coup plotters, who were mainly Igbo officers, to pave the way for General Ironsi to be head of state of Nigeria. Consequently, the retaliatory events by northern members of the Nigerian army that led to the deaths of many innocent Igbo soldiers and civilians caused the Nigerian Civil War. On the morning of 15 January 1966, at a meeting with some local journalists in Kaduna seeking to find out what was going on, it was brought to Major Nzeogwu's attention that the only information about the events then was what was being broadcast by the BBC. Nzeogwu was surprised because he had expected a radio broadcast of the rebels from Lagos. He is said to have gone wild when he learned that Emmanuel Ifejuna in Lagos had not made any plans whatsoever to neutralize Johnson Ironsi, who was the commander of the army. Therefore, Nzeogwu hurriedly drafted a speech that was broadcast on Radio Kaduna sometime around 12 a.m. and in which he declared martial law over the northern provinces of Nigeria. Acting President Nwafor Orizu made a nationwide broadcast after he had briefed President Nnamdi Azikiwe on the phone about the decision of the cabinet, announcing the cabinet's voluntary decision to transfer power to the armed forces. Major General Johnson Ironsi then made his own broadcast, accepting the invitation. On 17 January, Major General Ironsi established the Supreme Military Council in Lagos and effectively suspended the constitution. Danjuma arrested Ironsi and questioned him about his alleged complicity in the coup, which saw the demise of the Sardana of Sokoto, Ahmadu Bello. The circumstances leading to Agwi's death have remained a subject of much controversy in Nigeria. His body and that of Fajri were later discovered in a nearby forest. Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, a Christian from the Middle Belt, became the head of state after the coup. His first act was to reinstate the federal system, along with the 4 regions and their allotted functions. But relations between the federal government and the eastern region, led by military governor Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, were very strained. In addition to the elimination of many Igbo officers during the July coup, a massive pogrom against Igbos occurred in the northern region. In September, Colonel Gowon summoned an ad hoc constitutional conference to deliberate on the country's political future. Most regional delegates to the conference, with the exception of those from the Midwest, recommended a non-federal system to replace the federal system. The delegates from the eastern region insisted that any region wishing to secede from the Federation should be allowed to do so. The conference was ended abruptly by increased killings of Igbos in the north and the heightening of tensions between the federal government and the eastern region. A summit of military leaders at Aburi, Ghana, in January 1967 attempted to resolve the disagreements and recommended the establishment of a base confederation of regions. The Aburi Agreement became a source of contention, however. In anticipation of Eastern secession, Gowon moved quickly to weaken the support base of the region by decreeing the creation of 12 new states to replace the 4 regions. 6 of these states contained minority groups that had demanded state creation since the 1950s. Gowon rightly calculated that the eastern minorities would not actively support the Igbos, given the prospect of having their own states if the secession effort were defeated. Many of the federal troops who fought the Civil War, known as the Biafra War, to bring the eastern region back to the Federation, were members of minority groups. The war lasted 30 months and ended in January 1970. In accepting Biafra's unconditional ceasefire, Gowon declared that there would be no victor and no vanquished. In this spirit, the years afterward were declared to be a period of rehabilitation, reconstruction, and reconciliation. The oil price boom, which began as a result of the high price of crude oil, the country's major revenue earner, in the world market in 1973, increased the federal government's ability to undertake these tasks. The post-war Gowon government issued a 9-point transition program that was to culminate in the handing over of power to a civilian government on October 1, 1976. The agenda of the transition included the reorganization of the armed forces, the completion of the establishment of the 12 states announced in 1967, a census, a new constitution, and elections. Gowon initiated several nation-building policies, the most notable of which was the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, a community service institution that required 1 year of service by each Nigerian immediately after graduation from university or other institutions of higher learning. Each member of the course had to serve in a state other than his or her home state. More than 1 million graduates had served in this program by 1990. The Gowon years also saw the oil boom and a buoyant economy. The federal government was encouraged to take on some responsibilities formerly allocated to the states, especially in the area of education. It embarked on major infrastructural projects to transfer control of the economy from foreigners to Nigerians. The Nigerian Enterprises Promotion Decree of 1972, which was expanded in 1977, stipulated that only Nigerians could participate in certain categories of business. In those in which foreign involvement was permitted, controlling shares had to be owned by Nigerians. The structure of government under Gowon was basically unitarian. At the apex of government was the All-Military Supreme Military Council, SMC, which was the lawmaking body for the entire federation. Its decrees could not be challenged in any law court. Most members of the SMC under Gowon were state governors. There was also a federal executive council composed of military and civilian commissioners. The states also had commissioners appointed by the governor. The states were practically reduced to administrative units of the federal government, which in several domains made uniform laws for the country. This basic structure of military federalism has, with amendments, remained the same during all military governments in the country. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share. See you in our next video.